Hi, welcome to Synap-Talks from Synapse U of T. In this podcast, we chat with people about their work, careers, and insights within the incredible discipline of neuroscience. My name is Sophie, and in this episode, I meet with Diana Lucaci. Diana is an entrepreneur who uses neuroscience to inform product marketing. We filmed this episode in April 2021, so some references may be outdated. However, we are confident that the ideas in our conversations are timeless. Enjoy!
Hi Diana, can you see?
How's it going?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Good.
Great. I'm sure that you're very busy right now. So thank you so much for just taking this hour to interact with our followers and answer all our questions. We're all very interested to hear about your career path because it's so unique. I don't think a lot of us have heard about neuromarketing before.
My pleasure.
The first question then comes from one of our audience members, and they ask, what is neuromarketing and how does it differ from standard marketing?
So, what is neuromarketing and how does it differ from standard marketing? Well, broadly speaking, when you're trying to understand why people do what they do, it really helps to understand their psychology and also their actual chemistry and neuroscience. It's almost like I always viewed it as the hardware and the software, where the hardware is the actual brain, the software being psychology. That really all kind of comes together in marketing because you're trying to motivate and persuade people to take a certain action. So neuromarketing is essentially a bit of data on your customer that you otherwise would not get anywhere else by just simply asking them, because people can't verbally tell you, I feel like this at second 2.5, but at second 2.6, I feel like this. And I'm looking over here, it's just not. But I can kind of start with a little bit of a background on me and kind of how I got here, if you want.
Yeah, for sure. So we do have some questions that are specifically tailored to that. Thank you so much for answering that first question. And then I guess we can jump right to this question that comes from another one of our audience members who asks, what was the journey / process of creating your own company like?
So the journey or the process for creating my own company, it's interesting because I started with the question of what drives people to do what they do. And when I was doing my undergrad, I studied at UTSC. That was kind of really the motivation. That was the only thing I knew at the time that I was interested in. The options were, well, you can go into a medical field or you can go into research. So I never really saw entrepreneurship as being one of the options that was presented. It wasn't until I started to kind of got this idea, and I was approaching a couple of professors, and this was back in early 2000s. The notion of using neuroscience for business was so new that many of them thought, it's not going to work. It's not going to take off. This is not necessarily something that people want. And so the problem is that only made me want to do it more, right? So I felt like I had this kind of drive to be self-employed. I always felt like I like the idea of, the theory and the science behind how the brain works and the mind and all that. But can I make it applicable? Can I make it really useful to the real world somehow? So I wanted to take the science out of the lab and bring it into the boardroom somehow. Because during my university years, I was also working for banks and various companies. So I was getting a little bit of that experience around how the world actually works, which is not something they can teach you in school, right? So combining the two is really important. I didn't really get anywhere at the time within the academic environment. And so I decided to work in marketing because I always kind of knew I always felt like I'm going to come around full circle. I feel like I'm going to come back to the neuroscience bit, but approaching a marketing position. So I started as a marketing specialist, basically.
Okay.
That kind of set me apart a little bit. So when you come from neuroscience and you understand the brain and the mind, you look different than the other candidates that they're reviewing. So you're not just, I went to marketing school and everybody who goes to marketing school kind of comes out the same way. You have a bit of an edge. And I kind of leaned into that, whenever people say like, find your balance and try to be a little bit of everything. Like, no, I really believe you need to find your edge, find what makes you different, sharpen that edge, and carve out exactly what your future will look like. And so I felt like, okay, this is how do I use this to my advantage? And I started applying for marketing jobs. And when I got my first marketing job, I went from just being advancing through in the corporate world really relies and depends on your ability to communicate with others, to form partnerships and alliances and things like that. It's less about your skill on paper, right? It's less about your desk work. It's more about your people, your ability to, I got your back, you got my back, I'll help you here, you help me there. It's collaboration, right? So that's kind of, and that combined with being conscientious, you have to do what you say you're going to do, be trustworthy, think that like your name is your highest asset, right? Your name is all you have. So you have to you look at kind of progressing through the corporate world, and making sure you have good, solid relationships everywhere you go. And basically after about 8 years of being in marketing, I reached a certain level, and then I was kind of happy, but then part of me wasn't fulfilled. And this was 2011 when the first Neuromarketing Association was being formed. And so my husband was really supportive of me at the time as well. And he's like, okay, you got to go meet up, see if it's anything it might be a thing, right? Like, who knows? And how many times do you get to be at the beginning of something, the beginning of an industry? So with that support, I truly believe that kind of sometimes all you need is for like one person to truly believe in you. And then you feel like you can just do anything, right? And then I started participating in the association. And in 2012, I left my corporate job and I started True Impact. And so a number of things, kind of the journey, if I look back, there's a number of experiences that I've had that helped in being self-employed. It's not to say that you can't be self-employed right out of school, but having some real life experience, like how I was in marketing for 8 years, that really taught me how to communicate within a business environment, how work is actually done, how like the process of achieving anything you're trying to kind of get done basically within your role and helping others and so on. So all of those came in handy. I think some real world experience positioned me really well to be able to not just lead a team, but secure the first couple of clients, right? Because you're not coming out of school with, hey, I'll tell you what your problem is. You need X, Y, Z. And they're looking at you like, have you been here? Like, you just joined the party, like hang out for a minute, see what's up, like just observe, right? And learn. So just, so I think in terms of like a journey, the overarching kind of theme or mission of my whole life is basically to build meaningful relationships. What drives me is a curiosity about people and what makes people do what they do and stuff. And I think you can spend your whole life being curious about that. It's not something that you just kind of like, oh, I did it this year, next, right? So it's as long as you're you know yourself and you know what you're guided by, you don't feel like you're swimming against the current and you don't feel like someone's making you do something. Because when I set off and I created my own company, the mechanics of doing that, I mean, that's going to take me a long time to explain, but basically at the end of the day, I have to be okay with me. And I know that my choices are my own. So I'm responsible for my happiness. I'm responsible for the team that I lead and them being successful. Everything, right? Like, you have to be okay understanding yourself, I think, is the first step, right? So that's kind of the journey, right? Like some academic, some real world experience. And then finally just kind of like, I put it together and there's no way for me to kind of go back now. I feel like this is, as soon as you know you're meant to be an entrepreneur, you have to do that in the same way like a painter has to paint or a musician has to produce music. It's like a calling, basically. There's no logic to it, because we could have just been in a 9-to-5 job and have a slightly simpler kind of structure to our lives.
Of course, I see. Thank you very much for that answer. And I especially like how you kept going back to this idea of how important it is to have real world experience. Definitely, I feel like a lot of us, well, students in general, but especially at U of T, I know there's a very big academic culture. So everyone wants to study. And a lot of neuroscience students, like you said, because of that, we're not really aware of neuroscience jobs or applications that go beyond the academic or medical setting. So I think that idea of going out into the real world and how that empowers you to find these innovative new applications, I think that's just such a powerful and valuable message for myself and our audience members to hear. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for touching upon that.
The way I see it is this is your life to create. And if, COVID has taught us anything, is like we have the freedom to create it however we want, right? So you can take, hey, I like, some blah, blah about the brain. It's cool. It's interesting, but I really like sports and I love something else. Like you find a way to bring it together. Everything intersects with everything, right? So for me, it was marketing in the brain, and design. So I think if I was to do it would be marketing, design, and neuroscience. That's kind of where I live. But you can combine pretty much anything with neuroscience. And even at this point in time, even though we've been around for a decade and the whole industry is about maybe 15, 20 years old, there's still so much opportunity to be innovative and to do something new. Neuroscience plus whatever hasn't been done yet. So try it, and reach out to people who have done and who have pioneered before, so you don't repeat the same mistakes. I definitely encourage you to do that. And I'm always around for people to connect with on LinkedIn, so I can if I can help guide anyone in any way.
Great. Thank you so much for that generosity of being available to sort of help younger scientists follow the same path as you. Thank you very much for that. And I'm sure that our audience members are really going to appreciate that. And we were talking a lot about, well, I guess this is what the gist of what we were talking about how neuromarketing sort of exemplifies this idea of going beyond traditional applications of neuroscience. And you mentioned that many of your professors were skeptical about neuromarketing even being a thing or even working out. So in line with that, one of our audience members has asked about which obstacles you faced in pursuing an entrepreneurial career in neuromarketing. I guess we've already kind of talked about it a little bit, but would you maybe want to elaborate on that, like the obstacles?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reason if you want to be an entrepreneur, self-employed, you already think differently. So you see an obstacle as a challenge, and every time something happens that is maybe knocking you down, the grit within you has to you got to pick yourself back up and keep going, right? So every obstacle is a chance to learn something from, and so you have to see the world that way, because being self-employed means you get 99 no's and 1 yes. So you have to, and this is where obstacles, I would frame them in terms of societal bias, right? That you encounter when you're in the business world as a young female, right? There are things, I mean, I was smiling because it's so many stories I have of just situations that maybe have been uncomfortable or just weird, or maybe, but these things will happen. So do you have enough grit in you to deal with that and to respond back, or to choose the way you're going to react to it, right? Because that's the only thing you can control. So there's societal bias against young people in general, more so if you're a woman, more so if you're a woman of color, you name it, right? So that is kind of one aspect that's going to take a long time before it goes away. The group bias that you have that you encounter within meetings. So some obstacles, for example, you want to speak up, you want your voice to be taken seriously within the actual work environment. You have to decide, am I going to be respected or am I going to be liked? Right? It's this kind of balance between like, you want to be approachable, but not too approachable that you seem incompetent, right? So I find that learning how to navigate these things, it's almost like, well, this is life, right? Like everyone's got their own journey. And I don't think it's easier for any gender or any person. I think it's kind of like, how do you navigate this? And you develop some skills, you develop some tact to know when to speak and when not to speak. Literally, like that alone is an art, to know when to be quiet.
Definitely.
Yeah, because it's hard. Like sometimes you want to knowing how to be diplomatic, right? And how to say no by saying yes, and being like very careful with your wording and with the way that you communicate everything, because you want to make sure that it's clear and it's not misinterpreted. These are all kind of things that you learn because of the obstacles, and whatever obstacles will come your way, you have to within you be self-assured and develop the confidence in time, which usually comes with age. You wouldn't have it, like I didn't have it in my 20s. But it's knowing that, whatever's going to happen, it's going to knock me down, but I know I have the tools to get back up. So you can't predict what's going to happen, but just trust that you have enough tools to get your ass back up, to keep going, right? So examples of like these, so in the business world, like I described, within like just being self-employed, I've had partners who have broken non-competes and we've lost, and it costed us like hundreds of thousands in lost revenue. I had to make decisions to terminate some partnerships, some agreements, or hire people, fire people. Like these are things that have to occur, and you have to keep like keeping that big picture in mind, keeping that kind of like, okay, overall, we're going in that direction. These things are going to happen, but the ship is we're still going, right? We're still navigating. And the other like thing that I could speak personally, I identified early on as a woman that I wanted to have a family. And so this is something you want or you don't. And obviously it depends if you find the right partner and all these things. But the most important decision you will make as a woman, if you want to have a career, right? Because if you're not interested in a career, then that's separate. But I'm just speaking from the perspective of, I'm really passionate about what I do. This is like a hobby to me almost, right? Like I love it. It's not just a job. So if you want a career, the most important decision you will make is with regards to your partner and your spouse. That person can make or break you. That person will be there to support you, maybe understand when you have to work 12 to 14 hours and dinner's not ready, and won't even bring that up if they know better, right?
Of course.
Understand when you have to work weekends because you're launching a business. And then if you do decide to have children, how are you going to have children and remain married? Because a lot of people end up separating. And raise these children and spend time with these children and be present and all that, right? So if you've made the decision that you want a family, I would say as an entrepreneur, you have to really be careful about who you choose as your partner. They need to complement you, right? They need to be able to understand. For example, like me being a woman, I need a husband, and I have a husband who is interchangeable with me. So if I'm busy, I know he can handle the children, and he can do all the things with the kids that I can do or that I would do, right? So that idea that like, oh, men are like second-class parents, we need to wash that away, because it's just BS, right?
Absolutely.
They can rise, like it's just kind of our like reverse sexism, if you will, where we feel like, oh no, that's something we should be doing. So as like, if you're a woman, you want to have a career, you already think a little bit differently. You have to apply that to your personal life and see, okay, this is going to be a little different as well. This has to be different because you only get 24 hours in the day, both of you. So those obstacles, I would say, in terms of like, having babies, obviously like everything around like birth, breastfeeding, early years, like all those things, you need a lot of support, because I've had both my kids while being self-employed. And I wouldn't say it's an obstacle because it was a choice that I've made, but that can really stop, and that can take a lot of women out of this.
Yeah.
And there were times when even I considered, like, what am I even like trying so hard for? Like, let me just go get a desk job and I can just park my brain, leave it there at 5 o'clock and not think about my business when I'm in the shower, on the weekend, in the car all the time. Right. So it's gotta be a good partnership, and you have to support each other. Whether you're a female or male entrepreneur.
I see. Thank you very much for that insight. I think that is so important for young women and young men to hear. But, as we were talking about, particularly young women and people of color, that idea of, maybe if you're in a certain, your circumstances make it so that you can't fully separate your career life from your personal life. And I think probably that's not something that a lot of people consider, especially when they're undergraduates, and they're sort of planning their academics and thinking of it in terms of, okay, how is this going to get me a job? But we're not thinking about, I guess we're too young to be thinking about, like, oh, well, how am I going to be able to maintain that job if I start a family, if I get married, if I have kids? So I think that is such an important, such a valuable piece of insight to consider. And I'm really, I never considered that, but I'm so happy that you mentioned that
it's not that far away, like, even if you're a woman doing academic research, basically, right? The number of hours you're going to spend in the lab will differ from the number of hours that your male colleagues are going to spend in the lab. When you choose to get married, I would say, like, the earning potential for women and men are the same. The only problem is there's a tax for motherhood. As soon as you decide to have a child, that's when your productivity goes down. Unless somebody at home picks up half the work. So something's got to give, right? And choosing your partner with that end goal in mind is the first most important decision you can make from the beginning, right? Like, is this just observation, right? Like, does he have initiative? Do I have to tell him what to do? Do we have the same level or tolerance for disorder and messiness? Right? Because some people have a higher tolerance for that and some people don't, and you have to match. And like, just knowing kind of like, if not just being supportive verbally with like, yeah, babe, go get it, but like actually do the work. Are you going to go out of your way to physically make it easier for me to achieve my dream? Right? Because when one person wins, both win, the whole team wins, right?
Of course. Yeah. I understand. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I definitely think that something that a lot of undergraduates need to be considering. Like you said, probably most of us are not considering children just yet, but like you said, it's not that far away, especially when we're talking about, marriage and partnership. So I think a lot of our audience members are going to value that advice that you have for choosing a partner who's going to be conducive to your time and coalesce with you to be able to sort of manage your personal and your career lives at once. Thank you very much for that advice. All right. So in terms of your career path, the final question that we have from an audience member is, what skills did you need to learn for your career? So were there any particular coding languages that you needed to learn, any particular methods of data analysis? So that's sort of more of a technical question, but the skills that you need to learn.
So I started, within True Impact, I function as a CEO, basically, and my job is to define the strategy of the company. Where are we going to go? What products are we going to sell to who and for how much? Deciding on how do we go about getting these clients, so sales, marketing, the business side of the business. Every company out there has a business side and a technical side. So for the majority of running this business, I had to do it all. And I finally brought on a CTO. So my CTO is a technical partner that I've been working with for 6 years now. And so he, as the CTO, handles the product development, the R&D, the innovation, anything that we're doing. So everything around coding, data analysis, and so on. I can put you in contact with Ferdinand Ephraim, who's our CTO, and he'd be able to answer specifically what software or what languages you need to know to work in this field. If you can work within a neuromarketing company from many different angles, though. It doesn't, you don't have to just be technical. So within a business, you need people who are technical and who can program and develop the actual tool, but then you also need people who can run the business. And this is operations, meaning, are we losing money anywhere? Can we be doing anything more efficiently? Are we spending too much time on that? Can we be doing this a little bit better? Operations really looks at how healthy, like, is the ship leaking anywhere, right? And can we stop that leak, or can we reduce it? Then you can participate in a neuromarketing company with, I don't like the term soft skills, because it's like every skill is a skill, but essentially participating with writing and producing content. So if you are studying neuroscience, but you are able to produce a couple of paragraphs that people can understand, that is a very valuable skill. Like, that alone is amazing. You're able to take something that's really complex and like, biology and chemistry and like nerd speak, and you make it into human speak, right? That is a talent. That is a skill that even we or any other neuromarketing company is willing to pay for, because you're able to cross the bridge, right? The people we're communicating with don't want to be neuroscientists. They don't make me be a neuroscientist. I'm a marketer. Like, I already have a to-do list. I have a full life. Just get to the point. Tell me, what do I make this logo bigger or smaller? Do I do more direct mail versus online marketing? Like, tell me what to do. And so being able to understand the neuroscience, but more importantly, taking those principles and translating them to a person who's not technical, who's not scientific, and explaining and interpreting that stuff to them that in a way that it makes sense. Imagine, I always say the analogy, like, my mom's friend needs to understand this, right?
Yeah.
So that is a skill. So that is, valuable in sales, as valuable in marketing as well. So you don't have to just go the technical route.
Yeah.
It depends on kind of where you are. So if you're more like introverted, you like to work on the computer inside, then you might be more technical. But if you're more extrovert and you like to be around people and share ideas, and you get energized from that, like I am. I tend to, obviously as a CEO, I have to be as well. Then you might be better suited for the business side of the business. Right? It just happens to be a neuromarketing company, but your skill is, you can take that skill, hone it, and then go to the next company and do the same. And you just grow in that direction, because you're building on your natural talents, as opposed to forcing something to happen naturally.
Yeah, I see. Thank you. And I like that you were talking about how you can sort of approach neuromarketing and careers in general from multiple perspectives, because I know that technical skills are something that a lot of people struggle to develop. And I know that because I struggle to develop them. I've always been so bad at, anything to do with math or computers. So I'm really happy to hear that, it's valuable within neuromarketing to also have those sort of communication and people-based skills, because I know that that's sort of more of my forte. And I know that for a lot of people, it's also their forte as well. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for elaborating on that. And you did mention that you could put us into contact with your CTO. That would be wonderful. If your CTO, we would not need like very much of his time, but if you would just reach out to your CTO, and maybe he could send us like a list of the computer software that he uses regularly, just very briefly, for those of our audience who are more technical. I think that would be wonderful. So and yeah, I guess we can talk more about that after this interview is done. But thank you so much for that offer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. All right, so that That's all the questions that we had for your career path. If we go back to how you are using neuroscience, we already talked about what neuromarketing is and how it differs from standard marketing. One of our audience members has asked, what is the neuroscience behind influencer marketing? So I'm not quite sure what they mean by influencer marketing. When I hear the word influencer, I think of like, an Instagram influencer, or social media influencers.
We haven't done direct projects to measure the effect of like influencer marketing. But what you do have whenever somebody does make a decision to buy something, it coming from a trusted source is one of those key motivating factors. So there is obviously it's proven that they do work in certain aspects in certain areas. We haven't yet conducted a lot of research in that space, so I'm not able to comment too much.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you anyway for touching on that. We can move on to the next question. How do you specifically use neuroscience in the field of marketing?
And consumer neuroscience is different than neuroscience. Neuroscience research means you're taking that sheep brain, cutting it, dissecting it, labeling it. Like that is actual neuroscience within an academic environment. So we're not doing that. What we're saying is we're taking the ideas from neuroscience and applying them to business. So the term is consumer neuroscience or neuromarketing. It's kind of like an umbrella term, and there's three main buckets within it. The first one, you use technologies that measure brain activity. So brain activity can be measured with EEG or fMRI. FNIRS, I think, is another technology, but we've never used that. So using and I'm assuming your audience, I don't need to go into explaining what these are, but essentially measuring brain activity can be done in those ways. There are advantages when we do an MRI project, then, you get into a little bit more depth. You need more specialized expertise and approval from an ethics board. When we're doing EEG studies, we're measuring electrical activity, which gives us different metrics. So in EEG, we know level of motivation, meaning level of approach versus avoidance, or level of cognitive load, or arousal, like emotional intensity. So you can get certain data points from an EEG study. You get a lot more data points from an fMRI study. Some businesses want MRI, but most businesses want an EEG study. In the post-COVID world, however, doing EEG research is very difficult because you can't meet with people, right? So a lot of neuroscience has moved online. So anything you can do in person includes, like I said, brain measurement. There's also in-person eye tracking. So glasses that people wear, and you track where their attention is going. And so that's the in-person stuff. And right now, because of COVID, we are very limited in the number of projects we do there. The second one is online work, so online research. And here you have tools that get at non-conscious response. I don't want to say neuroscience because it's not really a neuroscience tool, but it gets at that non-conscious response via a webcam. So you can use webcam eye tracking, webcam facial coding, and it just kind of maps micro expressions as well as eye tracking. Another online tool is the implicit association test that's used within for marketing applications to understand between brands and which one has the attributes that you want to see. So does Volvo mean safety? Does like Doritos mean delicious or messy? Where is the connection in the customer's mind between this brand and an attribute of the brand? So online, you can do those webcam type stuff. And then there are models that we have been building, models for predicting attention, for example. So predictive eye tracking is another technology that we are offering. This product is called TrueScan. So essentially, it's just looking at a picture. You upload a JPEG, and the software tells you where attention is most likely to go on the image. When is that used within marketing? The questions that we have are very similar, I would say, overall. And I would group them in like marketers or brands come to us with questions like, I want to know what gets attention, what triggers an emotion, what's encoded into memory, and what will kind of, influence a behavior, right? And so we kind of, okay, what gets attention? Well, we know we can't do in-person eye tracking. Let's do webcam eye tracking, or let's use predictive eye tracking. Your next question is, what's going to trigger an emotion? Okay, let's do webcam facial coding. Maybe we'll send a device to the person and measure another biometric. But the way you use all these tools that get at non-conscious response is essentially you want to understand, what is the brain doing? What is the body doing? And when you connect the dots between those various data points, one thing is you have to connect the dots, and the other is to explain or to interpret the data to a business audience, right? So there's many tools under the umbrella of consumer neuroscience and neuromarketing that can be utilized. It's very exciting. I would say, starting from so what, right? Like what do you use for what? That's kind of understanding the challenge and the reason why people come, and the reason why agencies and marketers choose to apply neuroscience to their data, because it's more complex than many of them want to get. Yeah. Right. So sometimes we have to make sure that with every project, we're always like, this is easy. We're going to interpret this for you,
Okay. I see. Yeah. I see.
So that it's adopted, right? So that it's approachable and not something that's like threatening and complicated. Right?
Yeah. I see. Thank you very much for answering that question. And again, this is of course going back to your answer is going back to like the importance of not only being able to understand neuroscience, but being able to communicate it to people who don't have that background, which is, as we've been talking about, is a very important skill. So I'm glad that we've been highlighting that throughout this interview. I suppose we've already sort of went over this. One of our audience members asked, how have you used neuroscience to optimize marketing online versus in person? We sort of just talked about that. Do you feel that that's something that you can elaborate more on, or do you think that you sort of answered that question?
I can give you an example. So if you go to truescan.co, there are a number of case studies there. So essentially how it's applied is, let's say a brand, for example, Burger King, has a challenge with their flyers that they send out. And they send out a number of flyers in a particular region once every quarter, and they track to see how many people have actually redeemed the coupons from those flyers. So one challenge they came to us with was, how do we improve the redemption rate? Because we have this product that we're really trying to push right now. And I think it was the Angus burger or something. And I forget the name of it, but basically we went through their original design. We predictive eye tracking. We learned, okay, attention is going in these regions and these regions. We knew that's not really what they wanted. And we made recommendations for improving the design so that it's directing attention to where they do want it to go. The idea is the first thing that you see in that first 300 milliseconds is what is going to then be evaluated for relevancy by the brain. It's then going to influence the action that the person takes. So the earlier in the process, as a marketer, as a brand, the earlier in the process that you can optimize your content, instead of testing, let's say you put out a flyer and you wait at the end of the day to see what happened, that's very reactive, right? You're kind of like, crossing your fingers, I hope this works. Yeah. So that strategy is not ideal, because in a business environment, you want to get more reassurance earlier on. And so you're testing creative before it goes out. What happens is that we were able to test it and came back with some changes. And the new version actually got more attention to the hero product, or the product they wanted attention to go on. And they launched that in market. And then we were able to compare the results between the previous quarter and the current. So they're able to track, okay, this has an increase of 26% in redemption, which translated, I think, to around 46% increase in revenue from coupons. Wow. So when you're able to understand the a small change up here means a really large downstream effect that is a monetary, measurable, quantifiable effect.
Yeah.
Those are some of the ways in which neuroscience actually helps generate more revenue. So our clients care about retention and acquisition. So you want to acquire more customers and you want to retain the customers you have. Those are essentially the problems that they come to us with. And that's what we use it for. We apply this data and we tell them, people are going to look over there. Hey, is that what you want? I don't know. Maybe let's change some things to direct them to where we want them to look.
Yeah.
And any little bit of change makes a big difference.
I see. Thank you very much for that answer. And the website that you mentioned at the beginning was trueimpact.co. Is that
it was truescan.co.
Truescan.co. All right. Thank you very much. Obviously, because this is recorded, or if an audience member missed that, then they can just go back. But I'm definitely going to look into that website later today. So thank you for telling us about that. Now, another one of our audience members has asked, what distinguishes your company from other neuromarketing firms? And I suppose there probably aren't that many neuromarketing firms out there yet, given that neuromarketing is still a relatively new field. But I guess if you had anything that you could say about this question, then that would be great.
Yeah. So neuromarketing is not such a new, we've been around for a decade and we're not even the first in the world. So, we still get put in the innovative category? Yes. But we've been at this for, a good minute. So what distinguishes us from other neuromarketing firms? I think the approach and what we focus on. If you spend a little bit of time analyzing how different neuromarketing companies throughout the world are going about their business, some of them are very academic and they focus very much on doing in-depth research that is very accurate and can take longer and can be more involved. Some will be on the opposite end of the spectrum and use a device that is maybe consumer grade or very low grade and claim to do neuromarketing. So is there a hard and fast rule? Right now what we have done, I was a chair on the Neuromarketing Science and Business Association, NMSBA, for about 6 years. And during that time, we've established some principles and some code of ethics as well that we follow as an industry right now. So I was there from the very beginning of the creation of the industry, like in 2011, which makes me feel ancient, but it wasn't, I guess, that long ago. But so there are some rules that every company has to abide, but they go about it differently. Some neuromarketing companies will focus on working with government. Some neuromarketing companies focus on advertising, video content, commercials. Some neuromarketing companies focus on particular verticals. So right now we're starting to see that there are enough of us in the world that we can kind of get really good at serving a particular market, like one or two markets, right? As opposed to just taking on any project and kind of knowing a little bit about a lot, but not really specializing. So we're all kind of starting to specialize now. What makes us different is essentially that unlike the other companies on the market, we have a focus on the bottom line. The reason my company is called True Impact is because I worked as a marketer. So unless I can measure it and quantify its effect, it's very difficult for me to build the business case to continue doing something, right? So I believe in measuring what matters. And so True Impact is kind of rooted in the idea that you want to see quantifiable results at the end of your experience with us, and we're all working towards that. And we give you actual business advice, so advisory, consultancy services, and working with the customer beyond just, hey, the brain did XYZ. Okay, cool. So maybe in a 1 hour meeting, maybe 10 minutes are spent on the neuroscience data. The rest of the time is a discussion of, okay, the brain did this, which means this.
Yeah. Okay.
Therefore, we should be doing this. And then you talk about what can be done and how to, and you focus more on the interpretation and the application of the data as opposed to the focus on it. So I think that's something that helped us be very successful so far, is because we look at, because, I've been in the marketer's shoes, like I've been on that side. So going to a boardroom of people and talking about data, talking about statistical significance and all these things that you're dealing with on a daily basis will just, like, you lose them, right? This is not their expertise and their interest, right? This is our interest.
Yeah.
So we need to kind of like create that, okay, let's put ourselves in their shoes and see what they care about. And by focusing on our customers, being less worried about, hey, what's everyone else in the world doing? Like, we are aware of it, but we're really just mainly focused on getting them results, making them look good, helping them be successful. And literally that's what led to our organic growth basically from year one.
I see. Interesting. Thank you very much for that answer. There. Oh, I see that you typed the name of the website in the chat. I was just wondering. I saw that there was a chat message, and I was like, what? Yeah. But yeah. Thank you for elaborating on that focus on really taking neuroscience and translating it into language that others can understand, and helping people to understand why it's relevant to them, even if those people have never really studied neuroscience formally or don't even have an interest in it.
Imagine that with all the stuff about your domain, imagine the other party asking, so what?
Yeah,
you have to be able to how to answer that, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the so what? And then if you can answer so what, the next step is answering now what?
Yeah. Oh, I see.
So what do I do with that information? You're telling me that that motivation goes up and cognitive load goes down. Yeah. Okay, so what? Oh, that's a good thing. Okay, now what?
Okay.
Right? The so what and now what are what will, or being able to think in that way is what's going to help you navigate this transition from an academic to a business environment.
I see. That I think that that's a very good formula to keep in mind. The so what now what formula. I think that I like that formula. Thank you for sharing. So we have one more question that comes from our audience members. So this question is, do you have any advice for neuroscience students hoping to pursue a non-medical / non-traditional career?
So really start with knowing yourself. Take every personality test that exists. Really spend time looking at being honest with yourself, because who you are as a core personality will not necessarily change too much in 10, 15 years. When you're going to be at a different point in your life, you're going to want a family, stability, security, and so on. So the time to make a career change is much more difficult in your mid 30s and 40s than it is in your early 20s. But if you really know who you are, like, am I introverted, extroverted? Am I conscientious, or do I just kind of wing it? Am I really good at keeping my promises? Am I agreeable? Am I too agreeable? Can I also say no sometimes, right? So those are some things that you have the time right now. You're not going to get this time back. So now that you have the time, the best thing you can do is figure out who you are, which I know if someone was to tell me this when I was in my 20s, I would have been like, yeah, whatever. Like, I know my name and address. Like, what are you talking about? But if you need a personality test, or if you need anything to give you the language to understand, like, I am this type of person, and it's okay. It's okay to be any way that you are, because there's a place within neuroscience, within neuromarketing, within the world. There's a place for you, right? So just knowing that is the first step, because what you don't want to do is waste 10 years being in a field that you don't like. And then you have to either start over or pivot, and you have more mechanics in play than if you have a spouse, if you have children. Like, now it's a little bit tricky. So to avoid yourself some heartache down the road, start with knowing yourself. If you feel like you would be better suited to communicate, to advocate, right? So if you're comfortable sharing information, telling stories, talking about things, you'd be a great presenter, you'd be a good salesperson, you'd be amazing in marketing, right? Like these are skills where that would be helpful.
Yeah.
You can learn the trait. Like don't stress on, what software, what tool, like what the mechanics of it, you'll learn on the job.
Yeah.
You will get hired for your conscientiousness. Like if you say you're going to do something, you get it done. Your like the skill you get hired for when you're young and you don't have the experience are, and obviously they're not going to be experienced, but there are things that, and somebody who knows themselves shows up differently at work.
I see.
Then, like you show up differently, you communicate differently, you act differently. People can tell, especially older people can tell when somebody's not being really authentic to themselves, when they're trying too hard or when they're not really in the right position, right?
Yeah.
And what we don't want to do from the employer side is we want you to know the job, like the job, and be easy to work with, right? And be coachable and be like we like hanging around you, basically, right? Like those are really do you like what you're doing? Do you know a little bit of what you're doing? Can I deal with you, right? Those are like right there in my core 3. I don't care about a grade point average. I don't care about what courses you took.
Yeah.
If you've done a master's or a bachelor's, like those are like a ticket into the party.
Yeah.
You can get a fancy ticket into the party. You can get, if you know you're going to work like outside of academia. Yeah. Your degree is just the ticket into the party, but what you do once you get there, right? Yeah. That's what's going to make your name, right?
Yeah.
Something that people are drawn to. Yeah. So the advice would be to really look at yourself and what do you enjoy? Do you enjoy working with people, sales, marketing, operations, business side? Do you enjoy being hands-on and doing research? Like, do you feel like being in the lab and doing that work feels real to you? Then you need to be really close to the data. Then that's also something, a career path that you can pursue. Speak to people who are doing that and understand, like, okay, in 10 years from now, what does this look like? This person's 10 years older than me and they've gone down this route. What's it like? What's your life like? Like, so you get up in the morning and what do you do when you go to work? And then you think, like, do I want that? Right? And if you're technical and you like to fiddle with data and statistics and technology and stuff like that, there's a huge, our company is mostly technical staff. So obviously that's a perfect fit. You just need to also have a little bit of maybe AI background, machine learning, database background, like those types of things as well that are kind of more in demand right now as we build brain-computer interfaces and technologies. So, but these are all trainable things. Even a CTO who's checking to make sure you know this, still when talking to you is going to check, are you like a decent, sane person? Can I work with you? Do you sound like you like what you're doing? Right? Because you don't want to drive a person when a person doesn't like what they're doing. You have to motivate them twice as hard. And we can tell, and then we're just like, okay, this is not like, I don't want this for you. I want for you what you want for yourself, right? I see. So that's what I would advise.
I see.
And thinking in terms of like, if you want a family in the future, and it doesn't matter if you're male or female, but if you know you want a family in the future, structure your life so that you can get as much done before your home life becomes more complicated. Right? Like if you're if you want to be self-employed and perhaps you're living at home, there's no better time to take a risk. There will never be another period in your whole life. Okay, you're going to have a mortgage, you're going to have children, perhaps you're going to have, like, you're going to want to go on vacation. And at one point in your mid 30s, maybe early 30s, your ambition is going to like, it goes like, whoop, and then you just kind of like level and you're like, I'm good. Like, so while you're in this takeoff period, you've got the time and energy and you have a clear, sharp brain actually as well, which you don't get back. This is the time to take risks, try a career, just literally try and offer like a month of your services to a task. see if you click. If you click, great, you get brought on, you work but just at least don't over plan. I say just kind of do it, because when something will click with you, you just know. As soon as you're in a field where you're like, oh, I could be doing this, and you're thinking about solutions and you're passionate about it, you're just going to know that this is the right thing for you, whether you're technical or not, and plan out your life, pick the right partner. Divorce is very expensive. I don't know personally, but I know friends and,
Yeah. I see. Thank you very much. Thank you. I think that is very valuable advice about, knowing yourself and taking this time to experiment. Because I mean, obviously I'm 20, so I don't know too much about, what adulthood is like, but it is something that I've thought about in my spare time. Like, I am so concerned about getting a job. But once I have a job, then what? Right. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people my age are also thinking. We're just so focused on getting to the future, getting to adulthood, getting our lives together, that we don't actually start.
And everybody else who's an adult, like, oh my God, no, don't, it's a trap.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I was like that in my early 20s. I was very ambitious. I was ambitious to prove something to myself, and I was driven by this sort of like need to gain external affirmation. I started working at 22 full-time in marketing. Oh, actually, even before that I was working, but like during my school. And then when I finished school and I started working, I've advanced all the way to a director position. And around my mid-20s, I hit that 6-figure mark. And I was like, okay, now I'm happy, right? Because on paper, it says that if I make this much money and I've achieved this rank, that I achieve happiness. And then you sit there and happiness doesn't hit you. And then you have this moment where you're like, WTF, like, hold on. Right? Like this was supposed to happen, almost like life owes you something, right? And it doesn't happen. And then that was the wake up for me, that I realized, okay, no, it's up to me to go get it. It's up to me to go find whatever makes me happy. So knowing who you are is the first step in that. And it's okay to pursue a job, but don't pursue a title. Don't be like, I want to be a project manager. Like that's it's not about that, right? Like, pursue the idea that, I want to understand human beings. You'll never get bored of that. For example, like I want to make people happy in their jobs. Maybe my work can make someone's life easier. That is a motivation, right? And if you get into the right industry, you get into the right space, that matters much more than your title. Because imagine if you're really passionate about the brain and psychology, and you have you get a chance to work in this space with people who think like you, who act like you, who talk about all the same interesting stuff, it's going to feed your creativity. You're going to learn a lot more than if you, for example, well, I know about brain and psychology, but I'm going to go sell dishwashers, right? Now, all of a sudden, all the time, this that you don't get back. I know it's hard to imagine, but this period of 2030, it is the best period of time. And so you've taken up this many years from your prime years. You've put them towards being an expert at selling dishwashers, but your mind is really around something different, right? You owe it to yourself to have a life that makes a good book, that makes a good movie. Right. So don't, I would also look at these experiment and really you only get one shot. Right. So the sooner you know where you want to be, the better. I don't know if that helps at all, but it was there. Does. Like wanting the whole like publications and I wanted a job and then and I did it and I got it. And guess what? I wasn't happy. That's why I left the job to start my own business, because I knew that's what was going to make me happy. If you seek validation from outside in the form of a job title, salary, or accolades, if you look outside for something that's going to make you happy, you won't get to happiness. It's when you start here and you focus, you turn your lenses inside and you're like, oh, who is this person, right? Like, what does Sophie like? What does Sophie want? What does she care about? Right. That's kind of where you can't go wrong, because anyone who's telling you like, you can't do this, you can't do that, you're just going to like bypass them so easy because you're not going to be shakeable. You're standing in your truth, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's very valuable advice, I think. Like especially. Oh, sorry.
No worries. Do we have any other questions? I think we have the.
I was just going to say, so we've answered all of the questions that have come from audience members. What's left are questions that Synapse members ourselves have submitted. So obviously these are lower priority because our audience comes first. Now my clock reads 2:08 p.m. It is about 10 minutes ahead, so I'm not sure what time it is on your end. But
I'm okay to go for another 20 minutes.
Okay. Oh, great. Thank you so much. All right, then I will start off with the first question that comes from Synapse. So our question is, do you think neuromarketing will become the standard form of marketing in the future?
Well, neuromarketing is not marketing. And even marketing is no longer marketing.
Yeah.
It used to be the 4 P's of marketing. That idea is gone, like product, place, promotion.
Yeah.
I don't know, potatoes. And like now it's no longer that. It's like customer success, revenue, like you have like social media, you have like even marketing is changing in its composition. So neuromarketing is not the same thing. Neuromarketing, it's a form of market research that supports marketing decisions. So when a marketer thinks, should this be pink or purple? Hey, let me ask market research. Your market research, what do you guys think? What do the customers want? And then the market researchers, some of whom are neuromarketers, will say, you should go with pink because of reasons, because of eye tracking says so, or whatever says so. So neuromarketing will always be a point. It will feed into the way marketing decisions are made. Will it become the standard? It's kind of becoming this. It's kind of already become standard as part of the market research mix. So it used to be 15 years ago that if you wanted to know what people want, you ask them. You ask them like, hey, do you want like, do you want this product to be like this, or do you want it to do this? Do you want it to? And every customer says yes to everything, right? And so traditional market research are things like surveys and focus groups. Focus groups especially are very challenged in these recent years, just because what ends up happening is in a group of people, you ask a question and the loudest person in the room will dominate the conversation. So now everybody is like, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I agree with that because I want to go home and give me my money and whatever. Right? And so the loudest person, and then the group agrees, and you're not getting valuable data. That's nothing. The marketer is still crossing their fingers going, I hope this is what they want. Like, I don't actually know, but this is all the data I have. So is it a standard now? Like, yeah, absolutely. Because whereas before it was, let's ask them and see what they do. Now we're going around this way, and we have a lot more data that is not just verbal, conscious mean like people consciously tell you something verbally. We have non-conscious. So what gets their attention? What triggers their emotion? What are they saying and what are they doing? It's when you want to understand the person, if you're a marketer, you want to understand a consumer, where do they look? How do they feel? What do they say? What do they do? Right. And you can apply this principle in life as well. If you want to understand somebody, you observe them. You don't just go based off of everything they say only, right? You have to actually see like, oh, okay, did they say they're like punctual? Let me see that, right? So neuromarketing is already the standard because these points that are non-conscious are critical right now to marketing and the way they make a decision. So I would say pretty much all major brands are using some form of neuromarketing research, online and personal or predictive.
I see. Interesting. Thank you. I didn't know that neuromarketing was I knew that it existed, but I didn't know that it had already taken off. so well. I'm glad to hear that. But thank you for clarifying that and answering that question. So this next question is complicated, and that's because I asked it. And I usually ask like really complicated questions that I'm not even sure if they make sense or if I understand them. So I'll try. I'll ask this question, and I'll see if we'll see. We'll see if it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is, the act of buying something is an act of internal decision making, reflective of the psychological and neuroscientific mechanisms regulating our behaviors. Would it be correct to say that if you understand consumer neuroscience, you understand all consumer behavior? Or are there other non-neuroscientific or non-psychological factors contributing to consumer behavior? So for example, compared to neuroscientific mechanisms, how powerfully does our economic status affect our behavior as a consumer? Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So just because you're able to measure their brain activity, it doesn't mean that you can get somebody to get up off the couch, go to the store and buy something. So this is a data point. Think of it as like a dashboard, right? Like your car dashboard. You have multiple dials. You get an idea for how the car is doing by looking at all those dials. It's not just like, oh, my RPM is this, therefore I need to panic. Like, no, wait, like what's your speed? What, know, is the AC working? Like, so in the same way, there's a dashboard of metrics that a marketer is using where consumer neuroscience is one of the dials. So the indicator is almost like, is there any bias? Is there, for example, with products that are eco-friendly or products that may cost a little bit more because it made with recycled materials, if you ask people, they will always say that they will choose those products. Always, right? But do they? Because the the purchasing pattern does not reflect that behavior, right? So there's one difference between what people are saying and and then what they're doing. So you're using consumer neuroscience to help understand that final behavior, but it doesn't fully explain it. It identifies that bias that may exist. Oh, maybe it's taboo for them to say, no, forget the planet. It costs 2 cents more. I'm not going to buy it. Right. They can't say that outright. So neuroscience is really good at identifying any bias that may exist. And people are not willing to say or not able even to say because you are not able to pinpoint specifically your emotion by the millisecond. Right. So does it, if you understand consumer neuroscience, you understand all behavior. No, there are external factors and they need to be taken overall as a dashboard. The example you gave as well, like the, what was it? The socioeconomic status? Is the customer price sensitive? Are they, the type of customer that is more motivated by nostalgia? So then your messaging will be, oh, let's go back to the way things were before, when things were great. So you appeal to many different aspects of what drives that person. And neuroscience just gives you kind of something that other tools can't. So together you get a sense for, okay, here's how the health of the overall vehicle, but you need multiple.
I see. Interesting. Thank you.
That makes sense.
It definitely did. It definitely did. Thank you. That does make a lot of sense about, obviously, like there's so many factors that determine our behavior, right? It's internal and external. So it definitely makes sense that
the one myth I had to battle when I started this business was the idea that there's a buy button in the brain. And so all the businesses were like, holy shit, there's a buy button in the brain and we didn't know this, right? And then all the neuromarketers and neuroscientists were like, calm down. If there was one, we would have known. And so it's not simple. It's not black and white. And that's one of the beauties of being in this field, that you learn a little bit more with each study that you do. You're like, oh, okay, women tend to prefer that, men tend to prefer that, or there's no difference. And you learn a little bit more about human condition from the neuromarketer side, like from the researcher side, and from the brand side. They understand not just the customer as a data point, right? Because customers are not data. They're more than data. We're humans, right?
Yeah.
So they understand the customer as a human being with motivations and with preferences and things like that from a different point. And as the brand, you're saying, oh, okay, I don't just know the data points. I know these human beings and what drives them. So I can create a product and a message that feels authentic and that is better suited for them.
Yeah.
So you give that competitive edge, basically.
Yeah, I see. Thank you for answering that question. That's very valuable insight about how consumers work. I think a lot of not only neuroscience students, but obviously U of T has management students and business students. So I highly doubt that those students are familiar with our club because it's neuroscience focused, but that I think that what you just said is applicable to so many different fields. So so hopefully we'll see like more than just neuroscience students paying attention to your insight. Thank you very much for sharing it. Now the last question that we have is, many undergraduate students of neuroscience feel that their career options are limited and that they must go to medical school or graduate school to make real use of their degree. What would you say to those students?
You can make it the way you want. It's almost like, imagine you don't need any permission. What would you do, right? And imagine if you knew you weren't going to fail, how would you act? Like if you have the ability to connect the dots mentally between neuroscience and another field, picture how those two fields could intersect and what that could potentially look like.
Yeah.
That's a start, right?
Yeah.
So you're not limited by med school or graduate school. You can absolutely pursue those things if you want. And the path is very well defined and clear. You just need to ask your professors and so on. But if you want something else, you just need to reach out to different people, not just like people like myself and other people who have, kind of found intersections where there were none before. And there's still a lot of space to create new connections between any field that you're passionate about. Hey, if you wake up in the morning and your focus is, how do I improve the lives of, I don't know, whales, right? And you're really passionate about marine biology, there's got to be an angle where your degree can help that world in some way. So you just need to find whatever that intersection is between what do you care about in the world. When many times when I say, what do you care about? A lot of people feel the need, or externally at least, to say, I care about everything. Everything matters. Well, if everything matters, then nothing matters. Like some people feel like, what is most important to you? It's okay if it's fashion, if it's chemistry, if it's mechanics, like auto mechanics, whatever you feel that you're passionate about, that's not likely to change. Right. So listen to that, look inward, really pay attention to what you think really, really matters in the world. It could be sprinklers. I don't care. Like whatever it is that you feel really matters in the world. And you will find an intersection, and you can connect the dots between your degree, and you need to just get creative around, like, how do I position my degree? I know something about the brain. How can this give me an edge? Don't think in terms of the limitation. Don't think in terms of like, oh, if I want a marketing job, I need to have a marketing degree. If I was to think like that, I would not have gotten anywhere really, because I would not have applied for my first marketing job. You apply for things where you are not fully qualified. Be prepared. I mean, I think I don't know if it's a woman-man thing, but like dealing with rejection is something that everybody handles differently, right?
Of course.
Some people are better with dealing with rejection or not. But get comfortable, because a rejection is not a rejection of who you are as an individual. It's just not a fit at that space and time with that business. That's it. It's not about you. It's never about you, because they never got the chance to know you as a human. Right? So apply for everything, find connections where there are none, and just talk with people. Right now you have the time and the space to draft out new ideas. If you want to be self-employed and monetize those ideas, you just need to ask the right questions. I think it's like knowing where you want to get and knowing kind of what's suited for you. But there's really absolutely, this rule that you have to be a lawyer, you have to be a doctor. Like, new jobs are being created every day. Who knew that being an influencer was a thing like 5 years ago or 10 years ago? It was just never. So you never know what jobs are going to be here tomorrow. And a university degree is useful in the way that it prepares you to digest a large amount of information. So the benefit I've gained from going to from studying neuroscience is that I can look at a large amount of content, articles, you name it, just content. And I can just step back and connect the dots, because I can process that information better than if I hadn't spent 5 years reading hundreds of pages about the brain and chemistry and stuff like that, right? And I just think that's a matter of practice, like being in the gym, right? Like, you work that muscle, you get better at it. That's it. So your school is teaching you how to learn, or obviously university is teaching all of us how to learn. But when we get out, it's, can we think laterally and see and connect ideas that otherwise would not meet? And so you're absolutely free to do that. There's no law that says you can't. I would like to encourage a good business is a good business. You know what I mean? Like, if it works, it works, and you can be the first one to do something if you want, or you can find a space where 3 or 4 other players are doing it wrong. By your assessment, you can go, no, they're not doing it right. I can do it better. Awesome. Go dominate that space, right? Go win there. So there's a lot of opportunity.
I see. Thank you so much for that advice. I think, a lot of students are going to really appreciate that, because I know, like, we touched on this a lot during the interview about how when you're studying neuroscience, sort of, it's difficult to understand how it can be applied outside of, a laboratory or a doctor's office. So I definitely feel that a lot of undergrad neuroscience students do especially need that prodding to sort of be innovative and creative, and to explore all of the possibilities of what we can do with our degrees, because we're not really like getting a lot of input from outside. Like, we're not really seeing and hearing from others about innovative ways to apply the degree. So that's why it's so important to think about it ourselves, and also, of course, to meet with insightful people like you who are in those sorts of outside the box careers, even though we did talk about how neuromarketing is sort of becoming very established, but how it's still classified as innovative. So thank you so much for that advice. And that was our final question that we had listed on the document. So thank you so much for taking the time to just sit with me and just go over these questions and talk about your amazing career. I learned so much, and I thought that your insights were just so valuable. Like, you were talking about things that I'd never considered, like the idea that that you might want to consider your partner. So when you're thinking about your future, not only just planning your career, but planning the people that are going to be in your life and how are they going to be conducive to your career. I'd never thought about that. But now that you mentioned it, I'm like, that's so smart. I have to do that. How could no one have told me that before? So thank you so much for everything that you've said. Do you have anything that you want to add, or any questions that you want to ask about our club, or anything that you want to say before we end this interview? No particular questions. I think for everyone who's at that point right now in their lives, like you're still studying and trying to figure out where this degree is going to be useful. I've been there not too long ago, and I understand the kind of lack of options. But I hope that this gave you a little bit of a different insight, so you can kind of see like, oh, it is possible. Like, trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. It takes grit. It takes
it's not even like intellect, really. It's really, can you get back up and keep going? You fell down, awesome, great, say good, because that's a learning opportunity. Try it out, wash your face, keep going, right? Like that skill is probably what's going to lead you to be more successful than just sheer academic knowledge that no one can access, because you can't put it into words for people, right? So this is where I feel like if you're going to bridge, if you're going to cross over and work in consumer neuroscience or in the actual business world, brands have market research teams where one of the requirements is neuroscience. Like, so there are jobs that you can actually go and you can actually look online for where could this be. If you just do a search, neuromarketing, neuroscience on LinkedIn, you're going to find positions that have this as one of the requirements. So you're no longer entering a world where no one has heard. Like when I started talking about this, they looked at me like I have two heads, basically, right? Like, what do you mean the brain? And I'm like, yeah, the brain, and you can measure it. And they're like, what? So it's a lot better. I think the conversation has become a lot more educated. So you can see companies are not just like thinking, you know, I heard things like, I don't believe in neuroscience, which I'm like, well, I mean, it doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. It's kind of,
it's a science.
It's a science. So those types of beliefs I hear less and less. I think now it's, yes, I understand neuroscience exists as a methodology, or the whole field of neuromarketing exists, but so what? And now what? What can you do? Can you tell me what that mumbo jumbo means? Right? Can you put it in some words that I can actually understand? So I know, oh, what you're saying is this. That means I need to do more email campaigns, right? That's the bottom line. That's what I'm trying to get. So if you can navigate that, and you know, for me, that was kind of my path. But I encourage anyone to kind of just think in terms of your life is a marathon. It's not a race. You're not just the next 100 meters. You have a long, long way to go. So the further down you can kind of plan, just kind of like have, you know, your ship is going to go left, right, but at least you're going in the general direction that you want to be going in. And and reach out, and I'll make myself available via LinkedIn and all that stuff. If you guys have any ideas that you think are crazy, or any, you know, things you want to try out, there won't be any other time in your life that you're going to get your youth, clear-headedness, time and space to try these things. So take advantage of this time that you have. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank
That's
you
kind
so
of my
much.
closing.
No, that was a great closing speech. It just like encapsulated everything that we were talking about. And thank you so much for your generous offer of, you know, making yourself available. Obviously, we don't expect you to, you know, drop everything if someone messages you and you know, you would drop everything and then get back to us immediately. No one expects that, obviously. But we understand that you have a busy schedule. So the fact that you're willing to at some point when you get the time, like interact with us, even though we're just a small club, that's so meaningful. And thank you so much. So generous.
I think there should be some sort of a course or something within universities where you get to, for a semester, just understand neuroscience for business. Right? Like that should be a course, I think. So let's make it happen.
I think so too.
It doesn't exist yet.
Hopefully. So. And you know, actually at UTSC, we just finished we completely overhauled the neuroscience program. So we just implemented all these new changes. I'm actually we have a neurophysiology course that's running right now that's never run before. So I'm taking it right now. We're sort of like the guinea pig class. So maybe there's like time, like maybe this is like a good time to actually our club could bring up to the director of neuroscience and psychology and talk about, you know, neuromarketing and maybe implement some sort of course or something, maybe a seminar about it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'd be happy to. I mean, it's something I've been wanting to do. I think it's just I haven't had time to look into it and the logistics of making it happen. I don't have the time to go and produce a whole course and host it and do all that, but to come and to deliver it, whether either if it's a seminar, if it's like a one semester, I don't know what it is, but I'd be happy to download some of these insights, because I think as neuroscience students are heading out into the world, it would be good to see where they fit in the world today, right?
Yeah.
So coming from a practitioner perspective, not an academic perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Yeah, I think so too.
So just keep me posted.
Of course, I will. And if
any other questions come up, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you so much. And we will definitely reach out to you if anything comes up. And probably maybe next year, our club will actually try to do like a neuromarketing seminar. And then hopefully maybe you could come back and talk some more about like all of your insights, all of the valuable advice that you have. But thank you so much for taking time today to share them.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for the questions. They're really good questions that came through. So sorry about the influencer marketing one. I wasn't sure.
It's all right.
I don't know too much right now, but
it's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Have a good one. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you. Take care.
That's it for today, folks. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Synap-Talks by Synapse U of T. By the way, the marvelous music that plays at the start and end of the episode is called Arcade by Artur Aravidi. It is licensed under an Attribution Non-Commercial 4.0 International License from Creative Commons. You can access this music at freemusicarchive.org. And if you want to hear more episodes of Synap-Talks, you can visit our website at synapse.sa.utoronto.ca. That's synapse.sa.utoronto.ca. Bye for now.